Neon Demon is a film that does a great job of showing and critiquing society's impulses and views about beauty. There are several scenes that explore how natural beauty can help you get ahead in life and end up causing others pain. Those scenes alone are thought-provoking on their own, but I want to take it a step further and correlate them with the type of technology that might become a reality soon. There's a short story by author Ted Chiang called Liking What You See, a Documentary. It's a brilliant story written as if it's a real documentary, taking interviews from people about a new type of technology that can induce Calliagnosia. Calliagnosia is induced through blocking the neural pathways dedicated to evaluating beautiful and ugly features of a person's face, so that that person doesn't experience any aesthetic reaction to those differences. Basically, it's a great equalizer that makes it so that you see all people at the same level of beauty. I want to analyze and review the main plot points and characters in the story and convey that in tandem with scenes and themes from the Neon Demon. All the scientific reasoning and facts in this video about Calliagnosia are in reference to the legitimacy of them as written in the story. The information in the story will be perceived through and interpreted by my own understanding of the source material, and I will also cite quotes that are taken directly from the book so they are easily found. I also used AI-generated artwork from DALL-E 2 and Midjourney, so if some of the pictures seem a bit off, that's the reason why.
Beauty isn't everything, it's the only thing.
The best place to start would be describing exactly what Calli is and how it works. In the book, there's an interview from Joseph Weingartner, who is an in-universe neurologist, so I'll sum up some of his thoughts and add some of my own. Agnosia is the inability to interpret sensations and hence recognize things, typically as a result of brain damage. Apperceptive agnosia refers to individuals who cannot properly process what they see, meaning they have difficulty identifying shapes or differentiating between objects. Associative agnosia is a failure to recognize things despite no deficit in actual perception. Associative agnosia patients can typically draw, match, or copy objects. Calli is an associative agnosia. A Calliagnosic perceives faces perfectly well. They can tell the difference between a rounded jaw and a square one, a straight nose and a curved one, clear skin or blemished skin. He or she simply doesn't experience any aesthetic reaction to those differences. Quote, "Human social interaction is centered around our faces, so our circuitry is most finely attuned to how a person's reproductive potential is manifested in his or her face. You experience the operation of circuitry as the feeling that a person is beautiful or ugly or somewhere in between. When people of different cultures are asked to rank photos of faces for attractiveness, some very clear patterns emerge across the board. Even very young infants show the same preferences for certain faces. This lets us identify the traits that are common to everyone's idea of a beautiful face." Page 239. Clear skin is a trait thought of as beautiful. Symmetry is another universal standard of beauty that our genetics strive for, but they can be impaired by inadequate nourishment, illness, smoking, or birth defects. Therefore, symmetry implies a subversion of said stressors. In general, people only like facial and body disproportions if they are sexual in nature and suggest good reproductive health, such as wide hips for childbearing or large breasts for sufficient nourishment of offspring. Quote, "Basically, Calliagnosia is a lack of response to these traits, nothing more. Calliagnosics are not blind to fashion or cultural standards of beauty. If black lipstick is all the rage, Calliagnosia won't make you forget it, although you might not notice the difference between pretty faces and plain faces wearing that lipstick." Page 240. All of these interviews are taken from people or organizations that are discussing the idea of Calli becoming mandatory on this college campus and in society in general. There's an anecdote told by a first-year student at Templeton University named Tamera Lyons. This is the longest thread throughout the short story, and where we can begin to dive into the real-world implications of such a technology. Tamera doesn't want to go to a college with Calli being considered a requirement. She says growing up with Calli being a requirement in her school was just normal, but always had a curiosity and knew she was missing out on seeing something other people could. She talks about how awkward it was when she hung out with different kids from other schools and would get in fights with their parents a lot because they were keeping her from seeing the real world. When she goes to a doctor to get her Calli turned off at 18, she's shown pictures of faces to make sure it worked. She immediately notices that something about their faces are more vivid and glowing, but that it would take more time for her to notice a difference in the way she looked. She spends the rest of her day routinely looking at herself in the mirror, waiting to see if she's ugly or beautiful, hideous or glamorous. She doesn't notice either extreme, so she concludes that she must be just exactly ordinary. Nothing more, nothing less. The next day, she goes to a snack bar with her roommate, Ina, and some friends. She didn't tell anyone that she had got her Calli turned off and wanted to just people watch and see how different life is now.
I saw this girl looking at me and I thought, she's really pretty. And then, this will sound really stupid, then I realized that this wall in the snack bar was a mirror and I was looking at myself. I felt this incredible sense of relief. I couldn't stop smiling. Ina asked me what I was so happy about. I just shook my head. I went to the bathroom so I could stare at myself in the mirror for a bit. Page 247.
You can see how immediately she gets caught up with her vanity, which is understandable because she had never even known what she really looked like.
So I've been looking at good-looking guys around campus. It's fun. I saw this guy a couple tables away. I didn't know his name, but I kept turning to look at him. It was like his face was a magnet and my eyes were compass needles being pulled towards him. And after I looked at him for a while, I found it really easy to imagine that he was a nice guy. Page 248.
The next we hear from Tamera, she and her roommate Ina, who also doesn't have Calli, are talking about her ex-boyfriend Garrett from high school. This is the first time Tamera has gotten to see the real him. And then Ina says he is so ugly that without Calli, they probably wouldn't have even dated in high school because they wouldn't have been in the same league. Tamera thinks that she doesn't see him the way others do because she has feelings for him, but she can't tell if that's true or not. Soon after, Tamera and Garrett get back in contact with each other, and then she sets up a video call. She uses phone software that makes it look like she's wearing makeup because she wants to look as hot as possible for him, but she's not good at putting on makeup yet. Garrett just got his Calli turned off, so it's a bit awkward for them finally being able to see what each other look like. Garrett has a pretty big reaction to seeing Tamera for the first time, and his eyes widen. Tamera doesn't think he looks too bad either. They make small talk and then go to sleep. They call each other a few days later and eventually ask each other if the other has been dating. Garrett shamefully says he finds it hard to date in college now.
I just said, no way, but I didn't really know what to say. Part of me was glad that Garrett isn't seeing someone else yet, and part of me felt bad for him. And part of me was just surprised. I mean, he's smart, he's funny, he's a great guy. And I'm not just saying that because I went out with him. He was popular in high school. But then I remembered what Ina said about me and Garrett. I guess being smart and funny doesn't mean you're in the same league as someone. You have to be equally good looking too. And if Garrett's been talking to girls who are pretty, maybe they don't feel like he's in their league. Page 265.
The weird thing is, if Garrett was talking to a pretty girl who didn't have Calli and knew that she was attractive, he wouldn't even know that that girl was out of his league. So if he gets rejected by her, the easiest thing to do is assume that he's ugly. So anyways, the next time they talk to each other, she finds out that Garrett just had his Calli turned back on. He says he wasn't happy with the way he looked. She tries to console him, but to no avail. She's a bit upset because she was hoping that him now seeing how beautiful she is would help them get back together. I wonder how she would have felt if she was ugly instead of attractive. It's likely in that case she probably would have been super happy about him getting his Calli turned back on, because then their looks wouldn't be a barrier to them dating. The last we hear from her, she is saying she might get her Calli turned back on because she feels she isn't playing fair and manipulating Garrett by trying to win him over by her looks instead of who she really is.
This doesn't mean I agree with my parents having me grow up with Calli. I still think they were wrong. They thought getting rid of beauty would help make a utopia, and I don't believe that at all. Beauty isn't the problem. It's how some people are misusing it that's the problem. Page 274.
I can never figure it out. I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't write. No real talent. But I'm pretty. And I can make money off pretty.
Daniel Taglia, who is a professor of comparative literature at Pembleton, said, quote, "This is just the latest example of political correctness run amok. The people advocating for Calli are well-intentioned, but what they are doing is infantilizing us. The very notion that beauty is something we need to be protected from is insulting. Next thing you know, a student organization will insist that we adopt a music agnosia, so we don't feel bad about ourselves when we hear gifted singers or musicians. When you watch Olympic athletes in competition, does your self-esteem plummet? Of course not. On the contrary, you feel wonder and admiration. You're inspired that such exceptional individuals exist, so why can't we feel the same way about beauty?" Page 259. Walter Lambert is the president of the National Calliagnosia Association. He blames advertisers for synthetically enhancing beauty out of the natural form and overloading our receptors with much more stimulation than we are evolved to handle. Quote, "How? The way any drug becomes a problem, by interfering with our relationships with other people. We become dissatisfied with the way ordinary people look because they can't compare to supermodels. We've all heard about men who prefer virtual girlfriends over real ones, but they are not the only ones who have been affected. The more time any of us spend with gorgeous digital apparition around, the more our relationship with real human beings are going to suffer. Until now. Now you can get another set of eyelids, one that blocks out this drug but still lets you see. Technology is being used to manipulate us through our emotional reactions, so it's only fair we use this to protect ourselves too." Page 251. I think this passage nicely pairs with the casting call scene from Neon Demon. The character of Sarah, who is a beautiful and experienced model, auditions with no attention or consideration given to her by the fashion designer. Then, Jesse, who hasn't even been in town for more than a week, completely captures his gaze and fills his face with awe and his eyes glisten. Sarah is of course broken by this and filled with jealousy and hatred towards Jesse. When you think about it though, is Sarah's resentment towards Jesse justified? Should Jesse be held accountable for being born a certain way, being born to parents she could not choose and a gene structure she could not control? And the fashion designer, should he be condemned for finding some things beautiful and other things dull or uninteresting? Picture someone you are in love with, or even just someone you have a crush on. Can you tell me why you are attracted to them?
Okay, that's your thing. For the sake of argument, that's your thing, okay? Why is that your thing? Because you did a detailed analysis of all racial types and you cross-referenced that analysis with a points-based system? No!
Sure, maybe there's a few characteristics about them that you can point out, or even something superficial about how they look. But you don't know why you prefer those features in someone and not something else. You can't choose the effect one person's smile or eye contact has with you. You can't choose who you fall in love with, or who you are attracted to, or what you find beautiful. Warren Davidson is a first-year student who said, quote, "I've always hated the way I look. For a while in high school, I couldn't even stand the sight of myself in a mirror. With Calli, I don't mind as much. I know I look the same to other people, but I feel better just not being reminded that some people are so much better looking than others. I was helping this girl in the library with a problem on her calculus homework, and afterwards, I realized she's someone I thought was really pretty. Normally, I would be really nervous around her, but with Calli, she wasn't that hard to talk to." Page 256. If the girl didn't have Calli and thought he was unattractive, he's still behaving in a confident way and people find that more attractive. And at the very least, it makes him less self-conscious about himself. Lori Harbour has an odd approach to the subject by saying that ugly people need to be more radical and fight back against conventional beauty standards. She got her nose taken off, which involves moving hairs farther back into your skull to catch dust. She has a ceramic bone showing only because exposing the real bone would be too big of an infection risk.
I like it when I freak people out. Sometimes I actually ruin someone's appetite when they're eating. But freaking people out, that's not what it's about. It's about how ugly can be beautiful at its own game. I get more looks walking down the street than a beautiful woman. You see me standing next to a video model, who are you going to notice more? Me, that's who. You won't want to, but you will. Page 265.
Annika Lindstrom, who is a second-year student, says, quote,
I think this Calli thing is a terrible idea. I like it when guys notice me, and I'd be really disappointed if they stopped. I think this whole thing is just a way for people who, honestly, aren't very good looking, to try and make themselves feel better. And the only way they can do that is to punish people who have what they don't. And that's just unfair. Who wouldn't want to be pretty if they could? Ask anyone. Ask the people behind this. And I bet you they'll all say yes. Page 253.
Well, I think that if she wasn't beautiful, you wouldn't have even stopped to look.
Rachel Leon, Tamera's mother, explains how visiting a Calli school showed her why exactly it was a good idea to raise her daughter that way. Quote,
Saybrook has a higher than normal number of students with facial abnormalities, like bone cancer, burns, and congenital conditions. Their parents moved here to keep them from being ostracized by other kids, and it works. I remember when I first visited, I saw a class of 12-year-olds voting for a class president, and they elected this girl who had burn scars on one side of her face. She was wonderfully at ease with herself. She was popular among kids who probably would have ostracized her in any other school. And I thought, this is the kind of environment I want my daughter to grow up in. Page 242.
She then says how so many young girls grow up relying on their good looks and not having to expand their minds. This is one of the best examples for being pro-Calli that I think would appeal to a lot of people today. There's still the worry that they won't be prepared for real life and you're coddling them, but if they never take their Calli off, then the negatives wouldn't be as worrisome. Joseph Weingartner, the neurologist from earlier, brings up concerns with spillover, that Calli will cause you to not find other things in the world beautiful that you otherwise would have gotten great joy from. There's a real thing called face pareidolia, the illusion of seeing facial structures in everyday objects. I wonder if Calli would block out that information and dull it down as well or not. Another worry would be the ability to admire art that has people's faces on the canvas. Deep, emotion-evoking masterpieces like Saturn Devouring His Son by Francisco Goya or Taking of Christ by Caravaggio. And for people that have Calli, will they even be able to create artwork that's in the same league or better? It can be hard to fully understand just how much beauty in life Calli is restricting. Joseph talks about how he wouldn't be able to adopt Calli himself long-term because, as a physician, sometimes you use subtle facial cues and intuition to treat a patient properly, and Calli would impede on his duties. He mentions researchers trying to create conditions that would also make people blind to race or ethnicity. They ultimately didn't work. Subjects weren't able to distinguish people with vaguely similar characteristics. One case caused someone to mistake everyone they met as a family member. Quote, people asked their doctors if they could get the same sexual tastes as their spouse. Media pundits worried about the possibility of programming loyalty to a government or corporation, or to a belief in an ideology or religion. We have no access to the content of anyone's thoughts. There's no neural pathway for specifically handling resentment towards immigrants, any more than there's one for a Marxist doctrine or foot fetishism. Page 258. I wondered that if you were able to get the exact same sexual preferences as your spouse and your brain was forced to make you enjoy it, how that would feel and if relationships would get better or not. What if your wife wanted you to be a cuckold and before the new technology you wouldn't have wanted that, but now your brain is able to send you dopamine and other pleasurable chemicals to make you like that? Would there be an internal struggle of you knowing that that was something that you used to not like? Or would the feeling of wanting and pleasure actually be genuine now? This next section is from two students debating at Pembleton. Jeff Winthrop says, quote, Calli takes away the good as well as the bad. It doesn't just work when there is a possibility of discrimination. It keeps you from recognizing beauty altogether. There are plenty times when looking at an attractive face doesn't hurt anyone. Calli won't let you make those distinctions, but education will. Page 247. Adesh Singh replies, we try to be impartial, we try not to let a person's appearance affect us, but we can't suppress our autonomic responses. And anyone who claims they can is engaged in wishful thinking. Ask yourself, Don't you react differently when you meet an attractive person and when you meet an unattractive one? We can't help but think of good-looking people as more competent, more honest, more deserving than others. Calli doesn't blind you to anything. Beauty is what blinds you. Calli lets you see. Page 248. Jolene Carter, who is a third-year student, talks about how she recognizes and feels guilty that people are nice to her because of how she looks, and she feels she doesn't deserve it. Quote,
"Whenever I like a guy, I always wonder how much he's interested in me versus how much he's interested in my looks. With my last boyfriend, he wasn't happy with me if I didn't look fabulous, so I was never able to truly relax. But by the time I realized that, I'd already let myself get close to him, so that really hurt to find out that he didn't see the real me." Page 253 to 254.
She only thinks getting Calli would make a difference if everyone else had it too.
Well, you can fix your face.
No, don't do that.
Why not?
Because you can always tell when beauty is manufactured. And if you aren't born beautiful, you never will be.
That's terrible.
No, it's true.
I don't think you can always tell.
How many people in the fashion industry, models or designers, would adopt Calli if it became real?
What do you think? Do you think she's beautiful?
I don't know, I mean... Yeah, I guess she's fine.
Yes, that's exactly the word that I was looking for. She's fine, right? You can sit down now.
I think they would be very opposed to it because it takes away from the art they are creating, regardless if it is healthy or not.
Now, look at Jessie. Nothing fake, nothing false. True beauty is the highest currency we have. No, without it, she would be nothing.
I'm not sure if anything in the entertainment industry would ever be able to stand out visually in the same way again. One positive would be creators would have to focus on the writing of a show, character development, and interesting story threads to remain relevant, because they wouldn't be able to hide behind the overwhelming attractiveness and charisma of the actors anymore. Calli would level the playing field for models and actors, but then if everyone is the same, then no one will be unique anymore.
Everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
These next quotes are from an ad run by People for Ethical Nanomedicine who are anti-Calli. They're trying to show some first-hand accounts of the long-term downsides of Calli. They say, quote,
"After I got my Calli turned off, I got recoiled the first time I met an unattractive person. I knew it was silly, but I couldn't help myself. Calli didn't help make me mature. It kept me from becoming mature. I had to relearn how to interact with people."
Having Calli was like having my parents inside my head, censoring my thoughts. Now that I've had it turned off, I realized just what kind of abuse I'd been living with. Page 260. Rebecca Boyer is the spokesperson for the People of Ethical Nanomedicine. She talks about the main weakness of Calli is that if it isn't used by 100% of the population, then it doesn't fully work because those without it can have more control over those who don't. Quote,
"A manager could promote attractive employees and demote ugly ones. A teacher could reward attractive students and punish ugly ones, but you won't be able to tell. All the discrimination you hate could be taking place without you even realizing. If you're outraged by that sort of lookism, how can you afford to get Calli? You're precisely the type of person who's needed to blow the whistle on that behavior. But if you got Calli, you won't be able to recognize it." Page 269.
Her speech sways a lot of the voters of the Calli initiative, and then some controversy arises. A netcast announced that there were two different versions of her speech. Quote, "The discrepancies are primarily enhancements to Ms. Boyer's voice, intonation, facial expressions, and body language. Viewers who watched the original version rate Ms. Boyer's performance as good, while those who watched the edited version rate her performance as excellent, describing her as extraordinarily dynamic and persuasive." Page 271. It's crazy to imagine other things like this that would be likely to exist if we could do something like Calliagnosia. Her manipulation is of course hypocritical. She's using software that alters incoming sensory information in similar ways as Calli, which she is so opposed to, And one of her points against Calli is that discrimination could be taking place without you even knowing it. While that is still a true and valid criticism, that is exactly what she is doing to get people to join her side. You'll need to have counteracting software that informs you if what you are seeing is real or enhanced, and that will always be in battle with a better version of the manipulating software. The initiative to make Calli a requirement on campus ultimately doesn't pass. Maria de Souza, who is a third-year student, is the president of Students for Equality Everywhere. She talks about being disappointed that the Calli requirement at school didn't pass, but is hopeful in a manufacturer who might soon be able to make it so that you can turn on and off your Calli at will, without having to go to a doctor to get it turned back on. That would change the argument a lot, because then you would be able to turn it on at work or whenever you needed it, but then when you watch films, go to visit beautiful sights of nature, or are with your significant other, you can turn it off and appreciate the beauty just like you otherwise would have. I think this is a great feature that would make Calli much more reasonable to adopt. You could use it only in interviews at work or at school to make sure you aren't discriminating against people. The worry with that is that if workplaces or government agencies made a requirement to use in certain settings, because then they would be infringing upon your rights, and I could see that going very poorly. One thing I always thought about was how different the sizes of humans can be. There are people who are over 7 feet tall, while there are others who are only 3 feet tall. There are people who weigh 800 pounds and others who put physical fitness and training above everything else in life and have a 4% body fat. There are people who could walk into any room and look around and know that they could physically dominate and kill every other person there with just their bare hands. I contemplate if society will ever be in a place where people advocate that limits be put on others to not get above a certain fitness level, because then you would be too dangerous to others. That you can't be a master of certain types of martial arts because if you snap, you'll be a bigger threat. You really don't know what could happen next in our society. Ted Chiang, the author of Liking What You See, a documentary, talks about a real study that psychologists did at an airport, where they intentionally left fake college applications around and saw who mailed them back to the applicant. They had different photos for the applicant and found that people were more likely to be helpful and mail the person their college applications back if the person was more attractive, thus showing favoritism for beautiful people, even ones they had never even met and probably never would. In his conclusion, he says if Calliagnosia ever became available, that he would at least give it a try. The pros and cons of this technology are hard to discern between, but I find myself leaning towards not adapting Calli if it was available. I'm not particularly attractive myself, and I am pretty short for a guy, so I don't see many benefits personally from beauty day to day. Even so, I wouldn't want beauty to just be taken away like that. For places like work, it seems that makes the most sense, but I wouldn't want businesses to mandate that you have to have Calli to work there. The new MetaQuest Pro with its push on avatars in the workplace might create something new that would be a little similar to this. You might start to associate people with their fake avatars and usernames, and know them in the virtual world more than in the physical. I do think that Calli would also help finding compatible partners though, because I think focusing on character and personality is more important than people's looks, and Calli would help with that. I've presented many opposing positions and situations in this video, and it seems whenever I think about one side of the argument, I tend to lean that way and then switch sides again when I hear the other. If it ever were a reality and it was the version where you can turn it on or off at your own will, I think out of curiosity, I would at least try it out. Would you?